blue butterfly flutters its wings against the dark, overcast sky. It flies in irregular, random patterns until it crashes on a white flower and rests its tired wings. The breeze gently blows the stem of the flower back and forth. Then with a jolt, the butterfly reflexively flutters away as a metal fist picks the flower from the earth. A warrior, laying on his back, clad in mail and plate, brings the flower close to his face and weakly lifts his head to smell the flower before losing his strength. His tabard is soaked in red around his chest, and the stain is slowly spreading. The warrior's gaze is fixed towards the overcast sky. It begins to rain. He closes his eyes and a calm smile overpowers his wincing frown as a light rain falls on his skin. When a raindrop touches his dried lips, he flinches before opening his mouth for more water. His grip remains on the white flower. He holds it as tightly as he holds his arming sword in his other hand. When he opens his eyes again, he sees the blue butterfly floating above him. It flies as if it were broken, like a leaf falling from a tree. It lands on his sword. The warrior turns his head to look at the butterfly on his blade. When he lifts his sword up to bring it closer to him, the butterfly doesn't budge. It instead goes along for the ride with its legs planted. He raises a confused eyebrow. His curiosity is interrupted suddenly when he hears a voice behind him.
I like this one's axe.
They were back.
Yeah, but check this one out. No way. I call that one. No, I found it first. It's mine.
The warrior was in no shape to fight orcs. If he stayed there, he was surely dead. If he took off and hid, there was a chance he could still make it to camp. And the butterfly launches off of his blade and flies with decision towards the woods. Using his sword as a brace, the warrior leverages himself up and hobbles towards the woods, grasping at his chest. His armor made a distinct, clanking sound as he moved. Hopefully the sound of rain masked his movements.
What was that?
It did not.
Up ahead, you hear that? Let's see how this axe fares in battle. No, give it to me. I want to see how it fares in battle. No way. The axe is mine. If we get into battle, we can take turns to see how it fares. But I get to use it first. Will I call second? Deal.
The warrior picks up his pace, quickly jogging deeper into the thick of the woods. The butterfly follows behind him, fluttering wildly to dodge the rain. Once in the thick, overgrown mess of the woods, the warrior stops to catch his breath, holding himself up against a tree. The butterfly lands on the tree and rests its tired wings.
I headed towards this way. Let's check it out. I'm right behind you.
The two orcs began making their way into the same woods. They were taller than the warrior, but even they could disappear amongst the wild growth of the forest. The rain picks up. From a drizzle to a storm. The hard rain pelts large leaves and crashes into mud. It sounds like a band of drummers in all directions. The warrior catches his breath and holds his sword in front of him. The orcs are in the woods, but if he can't even hear orc footsteps over the storm, maybe they couldn't hear him anymore either. The butterfly leaps off the tree and flutters in front of the warrior's face, drawing his attention. It then flies away and lands on another tree not too far from the warrior. He raises a confused eyebrow, and then cautiously took slow steps towards the new tree, careful not to trip on any knotted roots below him. The butterfly then leaps off of that tree and flies jaggedly to another. The warrior sighs and begins stepping to the next tree. When he makes it, the butterfly takes off and lands on his sword again. The warrior lifts his sword up to his eyes to look at the creature. It stood motionless as it went for the ride. The warrior and the butterfly lock eyes. A A branch snaps in the distance. The warrior's eyes immediately shift to the direction of the sound, but he sees nothing besides tangled vines and walls of moss, held together by twisted trees. The butterfly stands still on the blade for a few more seconds, waiting for the warrior to shift his gaze back at it. When they meet eyes once more, the butterfly's legs turn to about face on the sword, and it takes off. The warrior watches the butterfly as it flies chaotically through the mess of vines and branches and rain. After the butterfly gains a significant distance, the warrior waits for it to land, but it doesn't. It just kind of hovers there, high in the air.
Did you find anything?
The warrior flinches at the voice. It seemingly came from the butterfly. He raises a confused eyebrow and watches as the butterfly continues hovering in place, fluttering in panicked circles.
No, nothing yet.
From a muffled voice far in the distance.
Keep looking, I want to use this axe.
The warrior's eyes follow the butterfly as it moves to his left. Another branch snaps loud enough to be heard over the storm. It came from the direction of the butterfly. The warrior scrunches his face in shock. He fixes his eyes on the butterfly and holds his blade in front of him while he slowly creeps towards it. He and the butterfly get closer to each other. The warrior steps carefully and slowly around clusters of snarled vines and roots, but he always had an eye on the butterfly hovering in the air. Once the butterfly was just a few feet in front of him, he could hear the familiar heavy mouth breathing from behind a wall of moss and vines. It was an orc. The warrior, with his eyes as wide as they can open, watches the butterfly, and when the butterfly hovers just a foot in front of him, he takes his sword and thrusts it into the wall of moss. The warrior cuts the moss away with a few more slashes of his sword, and once his view is completely unobstructed, he lunges for the orc and thrusts his sword into the orc's neck before it could annoy him any further with its wailing.
Garrick, was that you? Where are you?
The warrior, with his teeth clenched, looks around frantically with his angered eyes to find the butterfly again. The butterfly floats in front of his face and then launches into the distance, flying quickly and broken like a bolt of lightning. The warrior focuses on the butterfly and stares as it hovers in a circle about 20 yards from him. The butterfly comes closer and closer. The warrior maneuvers himself in front of another wall of moss that connects two large trees. As the butterfly closes in on his position, he once again hears the thud of footsteps and heavy mouth breathing of an orc. When the butterfly is about a foot in front of him, he thrusts his sword into the wall of moss. The orc brings up his axe quickly and swings it down just as fast, but the warrior pulls his blade from the orc's stomach and evades the swipe. The axe strikes the mud with such force, it can't be pulled up quick enough before... The warrior slices the arm of the orc clean off. A new red stains the warrior's tabard. The moans of agony stop suddenly when the front of the orc's neck reaches the crossguard of the sword. The warrior takes a seat on the body of the orc to catch his breath. He looks up to the sky to catch large droplets of cool rain on his face. And the butterfly finally lands on his shoulder to rest its tired wings. They sat there listening to the rain for several minutes. Eventually the rain lets up. The warrior uses his sword to brace himself as he stands. He grips his chest tightly. The butterfly springs off of his shoulder and begins fluttering forward. The warrior follows without hesitation. It led them out of the forest, out of the field, to a road, to the camp. The smell of campfires and smoke of cooked meats embrace his senses. He collapses. When he wakes up, he's in a tent, in a bedroll, tucked in, donned in his arming clothes. He squints to scan the room with blurred vision. When his eyes adjust, he sees the general sitting on a bench in the tent, with his hands clasped together, staring at the ground. First thing, the wagon. Gone. said the warrior. Andrew and the other men? Gone, said the warrior. And why aren't you? 2 of the orcs that ambushed us came back to loot the other soldiers. And they let you go? No. I regained my strength and stalked them through the forest and annihilated them. The forest? The forest along our route. Well, I'm sorry about your men. They were good people. There's some steak and meat outside. When you feel up to it, you can help yourself. The general gets up from the bench and heads towards the exit of the tent. Sir. The general pauses. Yes? The warrior takes a deep breath. Have you seen the blue butterfly anywhere? The general raises a confused eyebrow. "8 months later, after the war campaign has ended, our warrior emerges from a cabin. He wears a backpack full of bread and meat and a canteen full of water. He marches somberly down a gravel road, but the sounds of birds chirping and rocks crunching, along with the tall grass on the sides of the road swishing in the wind, brings out a smile that was hiding from his face. Even a walk to the cemetery can be a happy walk. The warrior marches through the cemetery to a grave plot overgrown with weeds and sits down next to it. He opens his backpack and pulls out his bread and canteen and has a snack while sitting next to the headstone. The wind brushes his hair in and out of his face as he eats. The warrior suddenly stops chewing as a blue butterfly whirls past his ear and flies excitedly in front of him. He swallows his bread so fast he almost chokes, then jumps up to chase the butterfly, laughing while it chops and swoops and dives and stutters in the air. They dance together for several minutes. When the butterfly expends all of its excited energy, it flutters back to the picnic spot. The warrior's shoulders drop and his mouth falls open as he watches its next move. The butterfly lands on the headstone and rests its tired wings.